Welcome, Brian. And Ronnie, how do I pronounce your last name to make sure I have it
Correct.
correct?
Yeah, Rani. Yeah, I go by Dr. Rani, but Rani's fine.
Dr. Ronnie, okay. So welcome both of you. And although we've had lots and lots of lectures this year and previous years, we sort of skimp on eye health. We talk often about how to prevent cancer, heart disease, dementia, um, and we often just take eye health for granted. Although I assume anyone who has issues with their eyes, that's probably the only thing they're interested in talking about. So if each of you could just give a 1-minute summation to introduce yourself for anyone that's not familiar with you and let us know what you've been doing for the last 10 years to bring us up to speed, and then I'll ask questions. Dr. Banik, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So I think you pretty much covered most of it, Stephen, in your introduction. So thank you for that. But really, it's my mission to bring together the best of both worlds in ophthalmology and eye care, which is traditional Western conventional methods with a holistic method and really grounded in nutrition and lifestyle, botanical supplements, stress modulation, and mindset about vision. And you're so right that we take our vision for granted until something goes wrong. So my mission is to really make eye health a priority. So people recognize that it's important to go get checked, just like we go see our dentist twice a year. We go to our primary, we get our mammograms, colonoscopies. We should be seeing the eye doctor once a year.
Thank you.
And I do. I've read your book, Doctor. Congratulations. You know, what you did is you managed to take a very important scientific science that people really never get to read and melt it down so that everyone can understand it. So congratulations for what
Thank
you
you.
did.
Thank you.
So I, like you, Stephen, believe that we always talk about the dramatic things, you know, cancers, heart disease, diabetes. But what's more dramatic than eyesight? It's your world. What you see through your eyes and you perceive through your eyes are creating your reality. And, you know, one of the great stories I read was back from 100 years ago. And it was this wonderful doctor, medical doctor called Dr. Bates, that started to notice more and more people needed glasses. And he correctly surmised that when people were outside and they were farming and they were looking at the sun and the bird, their eye would go this way, and they would hear a child and their eye would go this way. We were inherently and naturally exercising our eyes. And then the Industrial Revolution came in, and here's conveyor belts. And people were, this isn't a negative comment, people were illiterate. I mean, pretty many, the high percentage population could not read. So now people begin to read. People are looking at conveyor belts. We're in factories, we're in offices, we're no longer outside. So the movement of the eye stopped. And he noted that he saw ever increasing amounts of eyeglasses that were required and getting to be younger and younger. And he created a program, I must have used it 20,000 times here with guests over the 55 years I've done this work. And I can tell you, I've seen everything from, you know, not deep blindness, but moderate early blindness to people removing glasses with this. The great story on this is my father-in-law in Sweden, who's actually 97 years old. He reads 4 to 6 hours a day without glasses. And back when he was 45 years old, he got out, he was a macho, he's a Viking, of course. He took his glasses, broke them, stepped on them, and swore he'd never wear glasses. And he, through his mindset and through his vision and through the Bates method and the way he eats, did so.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So we appreciate both of you giving individual lectures where you can go into greater detail and explain everything with presentations. What's worked best for the panels is not to try to incorporate too much information into each answer. So it's ideal if we could ask 50 questions and get a 1-minute answer to each. So this way we could not go into detail, but instead cover lots and lots of topics. If we go into significant detail, we'll end up missing the opportunity to ask lots of additional questions that people don't necessarily want details on. They just want to get your very short opinion. So if you could keep the answers to 1 minute. You could each comment on, you don't have to both comment on the same question, but feel free if you'd like to add something to the question that I asked the other person. But if you could keep it to 1 minute, that would be ideal. Okay.
Doctor, you better take the lead, because if I do it in a minute, it will be a miracle.
I'll do my best as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start. Dr. Banik, in your experience, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about nutrition and eye health?
I think the biggest misconception by far is that if you just eat enough carrots, you'll have perfect 20/20 vision. And that's a myth that's, well, it's not a complete myth, but it's a semi-myth that's been propagated through the generations. It came out of World War II, interestingly, where British pilots were able to shoot down German planes, and the Germans couldn't figure out how they're doing it. So they started spreading this myth that, oh, the pilots are eating lots of carrots, so they have great night vision. But the truth is, the British pilots had radar technology, so it wasn't just the carrots; it was radar that was helping them to detect the planes in the dark. But anyway, carrots are important for vision. I'm not going to, say that they're not. They provide beta carotene, which can help with night vision as well as help with dry eye. But there really is a full spectrum of nutrients our eyes need. And I don't know if my minute is up, but I'll just add one more thing here. The eye is really complex. It's small. It's a small organ about the size of a golf ball, but it has over 40 parts and over 200 cell types. And each of these parts and cell types has their own nutrient needs. So it's not just, again, one food and one nutrient that we need. It's a whole spectrum, diversity. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why it's called Beyond Carrots.
Thank you.
Excellent answer. I mean, I think the biggest misconcept is that the eyes are something uniquely different than the rest of the anatomy, and that they're sort of individual. You're going to see I have a few slides that will say more than a lot of words, how the eyes actually map out every organ system of the body, how actually how you eat, and as you pointed out so very well, the cornea needs a totally different nutrient than the iris does. Now, why? Because they do different things. Like, as an example, if you look at the body, the hands, which you say, you mean the hands need nutrition? Yeah, require something much different than my liver would or my heart would. And so what we can get done tonight, hopefully, is to explain what you should eat and for what particular part of your eye, and why that slows the aging process, why that dramatically reduces the potential for people to have, the need for surgeries later in life. Everything from cataracts, which in the Sun Belt, as you know, doctor, but the audience probably doesn't, we have double the cataracts than in the North. And there's reasons for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. What impact, you could both answer this, what impact does regular exercise have on the health of our eyes and the prevention of vision-threatening conditions?
So I can start. We know from several studies in a particular condition, macular degeneration, which is a leading cause of blindness around the world, that when people exercise, even small amounts, even mild to moderate activity, they had reduced risks of losing vision from macular degeneration. And it could be as little as 30 minutes twice or 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be super high impact. And what we think is happening here, there's probably multiple reasons why exercise can benefit our eyes. Number one, it helps to keep oxygen moving. It helps with blood flow. We're getting more circulation to our eyes, which not only brings nutrients to our eyes, but it also helps to remove toxins from our system. And our eyes are so vulnerable to toxins. So that's just one example. And also with regular exercise, it decreases the risk of other systemic conditions that Dr. Clement was mentioning, that the eye is not in isolation. It's really intimately connected with the rest of the body. So if you exercise, there's less risk you're going to have hypertension or high blood pressure, and also diabetes. And those are 2 systemic conditions that can really have a very negative impact on the retinal circulation and cause vision loss long term.
My God, I cannot tell you how important exercise is for the eyes. I always joke here on campus with the guests. I say, we get up in the morning and say, the Sandman came. It's really the mucus man. The eyes are a channel of elimination that rival, if don't supersede, the urinary tract and the anal opening. You have so much coming out of your eyes. Now, if you were like a saint, living well, healthfully, drinking pure water, not living in cities, not stressed, the eye could handle that. But think of the way most people live today. So it's taking out, I'm making this up, of course, but I would assume dozens of times more poison than a woman or man would in 1850, where things were organic, stress loads were dramatically less, and the reality is they were outside. And perspiration from being outside and exercising as farmers, and before them, nomads. And so the oxygen, I think, would be the number one core thing that you should gain from why exercise is so darn good for all of the parts of the eyes that you can imagine, and more so when you put that oxygen into the bloodstream at higher levels, it pulls out the waste and increases the blood flow, which means nutrition to those eye areas. And that's, you can't be healthy without exercise.
Thank you. Talk about the impact of sun exposure on eye health. What specific guidelines do you recommend for sun protection, including the use of sunglasses?
Yeah, so we know that oxidative stress or photooxidative stress can wreak havoc on our eyes. It can cause growths on the surface of the eye that are either benign or malignant. It can cause corneal issues, even corneal burns. It can lead to cataracts, as Dr. Clement was mentioning earlier. It can lead to retinal issues like solar retinopathy or macular degeneration. So we need to protect our eyes from sun. It doesn't mean that you need to wear sunglasses all the time. I typically tell my patients that really try to protect your eyes between the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. when the sun is really at its zenith in the sky and it can potentially do the most harm. And if you're going to be wearing sunglasses, make sure that the sunglasses have a little label that says UV 400, which means that it's blocking any rays that are shorter than 400 nanometers, or 100% UVA, UVB blocking. Now, the price of the sunglasses doesn't matter. You can buy a pair of $10 sunglasses as long as it has that sticker. It's working, it's doing its job. It can be $300, and that's up to you. But I typically recommend also a larger style, so more like a wraparound style, because it's not just the eyes we need to protect. We need to protect the skin around our eyes, our eyelids, because those are also susceptible to oxidative stress and UV damage, and even cancers like basal cell or squamous cell carcinoma of the eyelid can occur. And so it's really, really important to protect your eyes from sunlight.
And my God, those glasses you're talking about, doctor, they make you look cooler too. So I want to share one of my friends. He used to work with me here 30 some years ago. He was part of our faculty, Dr. Jacob Lieberman, and he's an interesting guy. His background is extraordinary. He was a research scientist, an optometrist, created an organization, president of the College of Scientific Optometry, and was almost blind. Now we go back to the 1960s, 1970s, and everything he was being taught at university wasn't working. Now remember, it was very, very conventional, and we can both share that. And he started to realize the incredible importance of the sun and exposure to the sun at particular times of the day to, in fact, heal the eyes. And he did it. And then he went on to become the pioneer in this whole field. And it was wonderful to see him when I would have him speak to the guests here. They were just in awe, because I would probably tell you that in my experience, 60 to 70% of everyone has an eye concern. It's rare that they don't have an eye concern. They're not seeing as well as they did 10 years ago. They're developing a cataract, and some even a lot worse than that. So here are the things that he said. He's written several books, but my favorite of all that you may want to read is called Light. So number one, vision and light are one and the same. Now, that is factual. That's not an opinion. Light is vital frequency-based nutrition. So you think of nutrition as I do, the food we eat, but where does the food we eat, the plant food we eat, get nutrition from? Light. It's frequencies, it's the sun, it's photonic energy from the sun. So you're capturing it in a matter-based material and eating it. You're getting it directly from the sun. This, we know about vitamin D, but there's so many more things that we have yet to even scratch the surface on. Seasonal depression, that has to do with turning on parts of the brain. So the serotonin receptor site works. If you're in the dark, that doesn't happen, even if you eat a healthy diet and all the rest. Symptom-based medicine fails because it does not address the underlying energy imbalance that causes eye disease. So one of the things he showed me here, he had a device, it was pretty crude and I would say semi-effective at that point, that he would measure different parts of the eyes and it would show how much energy or frequency or pulsation was in that eye, and he predetermined what condition that person would have. Now remember, we're talking 35 years ago he was having it. Light produces verifiable metaphysical effects. Now you say, well, that sounds a little strange, but does it? So when I see images, why do I want to sit and watch sunsets and watch sunrises? That creates a metaphysical effect of my connectivity to my environment, everything around me, and to the multiple energies that support us and we bathe in. We coined the term warm vision. I want your opinion on that, doctor. I like that word, describing a new way of seeing. So warm vision rather than acute vision or great vision, or something that is considered mechanical. He's saying warm vision, by the way, embraces everything in a softer, more comprehensive, and in a totality that you don't do. He demonstrated that daily exposure to natural sunlight, especially in the early morning and late afternoon, can prevent and reverse degenerative conditions, which I have seen myself with thousands of people over the years, but you don't want to go out in the middle of the day if possible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been an emphasis on the importance of lutein and zeaxanthin for macular health. Can you provide specific food sources rich in these carotenoids and practical ways to incorporate them into our daily diets?
Absolutely. This is my passion, actually, is talking about ocular nutrition and specifically the macular carotenoids. So there's actually three of them. Lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. Now, our bodies can't make these macular carotenoids, so we need to get them exogenously, either through foods or through supplements, if there are gaps in our diet. I always tell my patients, strive to get these macular carotenoids through diet the way nature intended. And if perhaps you're not getting enough, take a supplement. But what these carotenoids do is they get deposited into the center of the retina, which is called the macula. And I can actually pull out my eye model here and show you. The eye is, again, really, really complex. There's so many, many structures here. But what I'm going to show you, if I can get this opened up. Okay, so I'm going to open it up here. And this is the front of the eye, but in the back of the eye, this is the retina. And you see this yellow circle here. This is drawn much larger than it really is anatomically, but this is the area of the macula, and the fovea is what gives us our 20/20 vision. And the reason why it's yellow, and it actually does look yellow in real life, is because that's where the macular carotenoids are deposited. And they're deposited there for a reason. Nature intended them to be our internal light blockers, meaning that they block and neutralize blue light, especially artificial blue light that comes from our devices, as well as UV rays. And they protect the macula against high energy light and protect against macular degeneration. So again, they're just three of the many, many, many nutrients our eyes need. But I would say in terms of dietary needs, they are perhaps the most important because they protect our eyes against the daily toll that we expose ourselves to, being on screens, being exposed to artificial light, toxins that we're constantly exposed to. These carotenoids are very powerful antioxidants, and they can help fight against eye disease.
Very well said. I love that eyeball you had there. And you just taught me something. I didn't know that it actually stored in the back like that. And this is why when people are under fluorescent lighting, it damages the eye significantly if they do this on an ongoing basis. Is that because it depletes that?
That's a great question. It doesn't deplete it necessarily. Only depletion really happens when we don't have enough dietary intake.
Okay.
But really, our retinal photoreceptors are constantly turning over. They have a very high metabolic rate. They're constantly processing light energy and then turning over, turning over. So it does put a great strain on our retina, and these macular carotenoids are there to protect our retina. And fluorescent light has a lot of artificial blue light.
Yeah, it's scary. Well, it's interesting, when you ask this question because, and it was, I don't know if it was a mistake you put me on this panel or wise, because the number one way you get these three incredibly important nutrients is from green leafy plants, green leafy vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add a fourth, sulforaphane. Now, many of you have heard me talk about sulforaphane for anti-cancer, actually help long COVID. I mean, this stuff is miraculous. It's almost like it's magic. But where you get the best results for these nutrients are sprouted onions, sprouted garlic, sprouted cabbage, sprouted broccoli, dandelion greens, which are free, by the way. Where you're at, both of you are now, very soon you can get them in your garden out there. These are just loaded with these things, loaded with these sea vegetables. And the ones, interesting enough, like kelp, which are underwater greens, have the highest amount of these because they're inherently the oldest plants on the earth, sea vegetables. And so they've developed a mechanism to hold these things and produce these things at a greater level through what's called refraction in the water. So when you take sunlight, photonic sunlight, and you put it through seawater, which is like human blood, it refracts, and actually it's easier for the plant to capture these elements that actually protect the eye. And I cannot emphasize for any of you listening out there today what the doctor and I have just said. You've got to eat particular foods. And I would really I'm not trying to sell her book, but it was very well laid out. And anyone could understand it. A 5-year-old could understand this book and say, this is what you should eat. And they're in alignment with what I would say, too. There are a few berries and things like that. If you're healthy, that's perfectly fine, too. But, so sulforaphane is among that list of 4.
Okay, thank you. This might be the same question asked differently, but could you discuss the role of antioxidants found in plants in protecting our eyes from age-related damage and conditions like cataracts?
Yes, I can begin with this one. So there are large population studies, mainly out of Europe, that show that individuals who regularly consume 2 to 3 cups of colorful fruits and vegetables a day, getting lots of antioxidants from those beautiful colors, they have reduced risks of cataract development and progression. And so we know that, yes, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, these are all powerful antioxidants, in addition to the macular carotenoids, in addition to sulforaphane. But there's another class of nutrients that really doesn't get much, it doesn't really get highlighted very much, which are the bioflavonoids. And these are also potent antioxidants found in plants. So that's why I always recommend to my patients, eat a diet that's really a plant-rich diet. You don't necessarily have to be plant-based, vegan. Eat a plant-rich diet and you will supply your eyes with all the spectrum of nutrients that you need. And again, many of them are antioxidants.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the antioxidants in the studies, there were 2 studies, one in Holland, one in Sweden out of Karolinska, that actually showed that the area of the eye, the pupil, et cetera, that's exposed to the sun the most, get the most benefit from that. And so I just realized from what you educated the audience and me with, that the ones who sustain the overall eye are hidden in the back, the nutrients, and the ones that are protective, the antioxidants. Isn't that amazing how the universe works and created that without, thank God, humans involved?
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing how we evolved this way.
Beautiful.
Yes.
How does hydration play a role in maintaining healthy vision, especially in conditions like dry eye?
Yeah, so dry eye is a complex condition. Not every person with dry eye has the same issue, but in some patients, they're simply not producing enough tears. And we need to stay really well hydrated in order to do that. And another benefit of hydration, now separate from dry eye, but for some of these other conditions that we've talked about, and some additional conditions like strokes of the optic nerve or strokes of the retina, which can cause significant vision loss, if we're not well hydrated, as Dr. Clement mentioned earlier, we need to get oxygen to our tissues, particularly our eye tissues, because they are so vulnerable. They are so metabolically active. They need a constant supply of energy, nutrients. Our mitochondria are working. So we need to supply that. And the best way to do that really is to have good hydration, because that improves our blood volume, and it improves the delivery of blood and oxygen and other nutrients to our the various ocular tissues. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I would describe it. But in addition to that, it's not just about hydration. There are electrolytes that are also carried with certain with water that are also important for the tear film. You were mentioning dry eye earlier. So all in all, it's an important thing. I've seen patients, unfortunately, who just don't drink enough water. I ask them, how much do you drink? And sometimes they're drinking maybe less than 8 ounces a day. And they end up with strokes, unfortunately, because they're just not delivering enough oxygen to their optic nerve. It's a sad thing that could easily be preventable if they just had more hydration.
Brian, you can answer these questions beyond eyes. So when I ask about hydration, you don't have to answer it only in context of eyes. If you want to expand it to overall health, that's fine also.
Okay, so I'll start with this, but we can speak about it. Remember, 65% of the population globally is dehydrated. Now that's pretty scary. And the general rule is there's exceptions. If you live in an arid climate, if you're an exerciser, if you perspire more, as I do, by the way, if I look at the sun, I perspire. And so, but for the average person, for every 1 pound of weight, you need half an ounce of healthy fluid, be it water, be it raw green juices. And you consider the green juice as part of the water. These people get confused sometimes. Now, I want you to see what I have up in front of you here, because if, by the way, you look at the effect on different organs of dehydration, why it would affect the eye is pretty apparent. It's evident. So the brain is 80% water. The rest of your body organs are generally about 67 to 70% water. And where is the eye closest to? Now, we don't even have to give you that answer. We should have put it closer there. We stuck the heart in the middle of it. It's because it's a loving picture. You don't realize this, but it's estimated that up to 17% of heart attacks and strokes occur from dehydration. And of course, in areas where there's less humidity, the rate is higher. And the liver, oh my God. Fatty liver disease from the American Western lifestyle today is chronic. It's like stunning to me. But how do you flush out all of these organs? Well, if I want to clean my sidewalk, I'll get a broom and I'll clean it. But if I really want to clean, I have to have a hose. And the hose, the water, is going to make all of these work better. And from those organs directly to the eye, it's going to create the hydration pathway. And it's not just the bloodstream is feeding the eye. And the problem is, and you can elaborate on this, doctor, because you're certainly much more seasoned in this area than I am. But isn't it so that you have more capillaries in the eye than you do larger veins?
Yes, the vascular structures are so small in the eye. Many are arterioles, and then they branch into capillaries. So we definitely need a healthy supply of oxygen and other nutrients to our retinal capillaries, and they can get compromised if you're not well hydrated. I would just want to add one thing to your beautiful image that you showed, Brian, which is, the eye is actually a direct extension of the brain. It is
Yes.
part the central nervous system. And in development, in embryologic development, you have your neural cord, and the optic cup is actually one of the earliest structures to develop. So the eye starts developing really early, but it's so intimately tied in with the brain. And brain health equals eye health. It really is so true. So I just wanted to add that.
So this is, I'm going to have you repeat this for the audience. So you're saying when you're inside of your mom and you're floating upside down in water, remember that one of the first things is your ocular that develop.
Yes,
So
is there's actually it's like a little stalk that comes out of the neural tube, and then it becomes a cup, which is basically the retina. And so it's called the optic cup. And then the structures in the front form from ectoderm, but it really is neurologic in origin. Um, so it's really amazing. And another fun fact, another tidbit is that with eye and the eye-brain connection is that over 50% of our brain is dedicated to our visual system in some way, whether it's processing, motion, resolution, color, contrast, or it's helping to move our eyes. You know, we were talking earlier about eye movements. There are many structures in the brain that are responsible for moving our eyes. And of course, our balance system is so linked to our visual system. So over 50% of our brain is visual. Keep that in mind.
yeah, you know, what's interesting, you talk to these very progressive scientists like Lieberman and several others. I'll talk to you about one of my good friends, Dr. Kelsa, in a minute. They'll tell you that you can develop an ability through the brain-eye connection to actually see things that the average person can't see. Now, I don't want to sound foo-foo and nonsensical. I don't have this ability, but there's people that I know that literally can look at people and pick up there's disorder in them. And there, you know, this is not really mystical. It's a hyper activity of the brain-eye connection, it must be. And there's enough of them. I've probably met 4 authentic ones. There's a lot of new age whack jobs running around, but people who I actually believe, because I would ask them about an individual and they would actually point out something's actually wrong in their liver area or in their heart area. They have inflammation in their arm. And then I say to them, go to the physician, let's check, or we do thermography here. And my God, they're spot on. So what I'm saying, this is futuristic, but I think we have greater ability to use the eye-brain connection to increase consciousness, all of us, so that we're a little bit more aware, less mummified in stupidity. That's the only thing I can say about that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The 2 types of macular degeneration are dry and wet. Can you briefly explain the difference and how nutrition and lifestyle interventions might impact their progression?
Sure. So I'll pull out my eye model again. So macular degeneration is a condition that affects the macula, which is back here. And it's a very small part of the entire retina. It's only about 1/10 of the entire retina, but it's the area that gives us our 20/20 vision. And what happens here is basically it's a problem with waste products not getting cleared underneath the retina. So there's actually a layer of cells underneath the retina called the retinal pigment epithelium, or RPE. And these cells are responsible for removing waste. And so really it should be called RPE degeneration, not macular degeneration. But basically you get these deposits. We can actually see them when we do a dilated eye exam. We can see these deposits. And just today I had a patient with intermediate stage macular degeneration. She had scattered deposits. They're called drusen. And drusen is, interestingly, it's the German word for pebble or small stone. So all these little waste deposits develop, and they in themselves are not problematic. That is what we call basically early or intermediate stage macular degeneration. But if it continues to progress, if these waste deposits continue to accumulate, what ends up happening is that they trigger inflammation. They trigger a whole inflammatory cascade. And what happens is there is ischemia to certain parts of the eye, to the retina, and then new blood vessels start to grow. And you would think that we were just talking about blood vessels earlier, that new blood vessels, oh, isn't that a good thing? But these new blood vessels are not normal. They are very fragile, and their capillary walls tend to leak, and they bleed. And that's when it progresses from drusen to inflammation, to leaky blood vessels that I like to call leaky eye syndrome. Many of us have heard of leaky gut, leaky brain, leaky heart. This is the prototypical leaky eye syndrome. And that's what we call wet macular degeneration. So again, it's a stepwise progression: early dry, intermediate dry, and then advanced wet macular degeneration. And it doesn't happen overnight. This takes years, probably decades to develop, which is really important because you were asking about prevention. We have a window of time in which we can intervene and prevent it from getting to that end stage. That's my goal. When I see a patient with macular degeneration, I talk to them about diet, about their lifestyle, about their stressors, about their supplement routine, because there are so many things we can do now. And even we actually know that this is really interesting. This goes back to light therapy that we were talking about earlier. There's actually emerging research to show that photobiomodulation, or PBM, with certain wavelengths of red and infrared and yellow light can actually slow and reverse macular degeneration. It was just studied. There were several clinical trials published. It is now FDA approved in the US, photobiomodulation for macular degeneration. I'm so excited about this. This is really like the new frontier of therapy for macular degeneration.
And let me tell you, one of the pioneers in that was Columbia University, right in New York. I write about this in my current book, Quantum Human, and it is amazing. People who came the way I did up into the health field from a very progressive way, we had a prejudicial ideology that mainstream medicine always did the wrong thing in every case. And when I really started to do deep dives into this 40, 50 years ago, I realized, no, there's good people, good researcher, good physicians who are trying to do their best, and they're willing to try anything. And so right there at Columbia is where they did the primary work on that. So congratulations to them. Yeah, but I can assure you that it is incredibly important to reiterate what you said, that why do older people hardly ever die of a heart attack and stroke? Because when they've clogged up their bodies from poor lifestyle, their bodies create alternate veins. So if you're not, when you're young, you're 20 years old, and God forbid you have a heart attack, you have one vein, it stops, kaput, your heart dies at that point. But if you're older, now you have this vein and that vein and this vein, the steam valve comes off. And so what you're saying is it could take decades, unless you've damaged your eye in some way, to go from dry to wet. And it goes dry to moderate dry. That means like half wet, and then to wet. And don't you think that's the body as we see in every injury? If I bang my hand, it swells. There's an innate intelligence within the immune system that's phenomenal. If you don't believe in God, start to study immunity, you will. I promise you. Because what happens is that as soon as that injury happens and cells die, the stem cells are alerted. They start coming out, but they realize the immune system cells are fighting the dead cells. It's going to create friction and kill healthy cells. So this is why water always comes with injury. So it's really the fight between the immune system to heal something, bringing more water. And now I finally grasp, because of your explanation, what the wet one is versus the dry one. That's interesting how that works. Yeah.
And it's preventable. That's what really is at the heart of all this is we can stop it from getting to that wet stage. And yes, there are now, you probably have seen on television advertisements for all of these new drugs that can be used, that can be injected into the eye. I always tell my patients, why let it get to that stage where you need to go see your retina specialist and get a monthly eye injection? It's much better to try to address this at its root cause before it gets to that stage, and use the power of nutrition and supplementation in order to prevent it from progressing to that inflammatory stage.
And I don't want to take your time, but I think I have a question others would be interested in. So how much does that impair your eyesight as that progresses? Early stage, not so much, but late stage, yeah, a whole lot?
Yes. So as it progresses, patients, number one, in the earliest stage may have no symptoms whatsoever. And this is another, call to action is go see your eye doctor, because you may have no idea you have this going on in the back of the eye. But once you know, then you can really act upon it. In the intermediate stage, people may start to have some issues with contrast. They may notice that it's much harder to see in dim lighting. And sometimes they may even have, because of these waste deposits in the back of the eye and these little drusen-like deposits, they may have some distortion in their vision. So when they look at, for example, a door frame, instead of the door frame being perfectly straight, it may look a little bit warped, a little bit wavy. So that's an early sign of intermediate stage macular degeneration that may be potentially progressing to the late stage. And then once a late stage happens, again, because it's the central part of the retina, think about the retina like a bullseye. So this is happening right at the center of the bullseye. So that area can get swollen from leaky blood vessels because there's blood and fluid and proteins and lipids that leak out. But when that happens, people actually have like a spot, like a blind spot right in the center of their vision. And that's when it can be so debilitating, because imagine you're trying to see the face of your loved one and you can't make out their features because there's kind of like this hazy blur right in the middle. And it can be really devastating because people can't. They can't read anymore. They can't use their devices. They can't work.
Can't
They
drive.
can't drive. It can be just so debilitating, and it's preventable. It really, really is.
Thank you for that answer.
Absolutely.
What is the role of omega-3 fatty acids in maintaining retinal health and preventing macular degeneration? What are the good dietary sources of these fats? And Brian, you can answer it beyond just eye health.
I'll
Dr.
let you go
You can
first, Brian.
start. You can start,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, so you have to know that things like Brazil nuts have some of the omegas, and avocados have the omegas in it. But the difference is Brazil nuts also have this wonderful nutrient that's almost impossible to find anywhere else in the world. And when you take that into your body, I can tell you, it has lutein in it, vitamin E in it. Nothing can prevent degradation of the eye and other organs as good as that. The other thing I may say to you is that when you start to look at omega oils, and let's make this overly simple, through the evolutionary process of developing Homo sapiens, our body refined only two foods as fuels: glucose, which is in all plant foods. So if you take an organic lettuce, it has glucose in it, and essential fatty acids. And lettuce and every other plant food has omega oils in it. So omega-3, omega-6, omega-7. The interesting thing, omega-6 was discovered in 1928. Omega-3 was only discovered in 1981. So it's sort of like only the last 45 years or 44 years that we've gotten the information on that. Now, there's a lot of misinformation. I think it comes from people who don't know much or really don't work as we do, both of us on the front line, where they say, well, don't eat this food because you're getting too much omega-6. They become like clinicians or, laboratory rats. And you don't have to do that with food. So if you have an organic, healthy avocado or a Brazil nut, or better than that, a flaxseed, which has all three oils in it, or a hemp seed having all three oils in it. These are the things I put every single night when I'm eating on my salad. Now, yes, they taste good, and yes, they're complete proteins, but believe me, why I don't use reading glasses, and I'm 74, I may not even have had a plan to do this, but I can tell you it's because of these things.
That's wonderful to hear. So omegas, I am in complete agreement that it's not just the omega-3s that are important. We know that omega-6, yes, they have been vilified quite a bit, but there are some anti-inflammatory omega-6s like GLA, which has been shown to help with dry eye. And then in terms of the omega-3s, I just want to add one thing. So the highest concentration DHA in the body is actually in the retina, in the retinal photoreceptors, more than even in the brain. The brain also has a lot of DHA, but structurally, the retina is highly concentrated with DHA. So we need a constant supply of that because, again, our retinal cells are constantly turning over with light energy processing. And beyond that, we know that omega-3 rich diets can help prevent dry eye. They can also help prevent macular degeneration. And then there's some more recent work that's also shown that some of the other omegas, for example, omega-7 palmitoleic acid and omega-9 oleic acid, can also be beneficial for dry eye. So I always tell my patients, just as you were talking about having these nuts and seeds as part of your diet, really mix it up. Have lots of a variety of nuts, seeds, chia, hemp, flax, as you mentioned. If you eat fish is also good to include in your diet at least twice a week. Not farm raised, but wild caught fish, and get those omegas in. And if you need to, take a supplement. I mean, personally, I happen to be a vegetarian, so I don't have fish, but I have an algal oil based omega supplement.
Yeah, and let me emphasize that there's no need to have fish, but I appreciate the empathy you have for a lot of the listeners out there today. Several of them, I've written 35 books, and several of the books point out that if I were to give you something to harm you, fish is probably at the top of the list, because we now know that it enhances fish oil and fish cardiovascular disease from major studies. You have more heart attacks and strokes when you take fish and fish oil. We know that prostate cancer, high grade goes up 71%, moderate grade goes up 42%. So I would avoid that. Now, my favorite of all oils that, by the way, fish get the DHA and DHEA from is algae.
Mm-hmm.
And the best one I found is from Norway. You get on the internet and look it up. It's Zino, Z-I-N-Z-I-N-O. Z-I-N-Z-I-N-O. And, we do the one we use here that's not fish oil. I went to Israel and spent some time with he's a really interesting Ph.D. research scientist that found something called clary sage oil and the Mediterranean. But he's also an active farmer. He has a big farm. So when I met him, he's in farm clothes like a farmer, and he's talking to me about all this incredible science that he's doing. And so the clary sage oil, you get a very beautiful balance of all of these things. And it's healthy for your energy and your brain and everything else. And let me ask you one question. We can be brief on this because we keep interluding Stephen there. What do you think that the lack of the omega, especially omega-6, is why this area can fold? I hear people often talk to me about their iris folded. Is it the iris that folds, or what is it that folds? Becomes like an accordion.
I'm not quite sure. Maybe they're talking about the macula, because you can get
maybe macular, but
you can get a macular, what we call a macular pucker, which is some almost like a very thin layer of scar tissue on top of the retina. It's almost like it's clear, so it's almost like saran wrap, like a very fine clear membrane that can cause traction and pull. So maybe that's what they're mentioning.
Yeah, and that really distorts it. People describe it to me like a hallucinogenic trip.
Yes, it can cause distortion of vision. Yeah, similar to what I was describing before, but for a different reason. So instead of underneath the retina, the problem is on top of the retina, but it can cause a very similar type of visual disturbance. Mm-hmm.
And am I correct in assuming that that may be a lack of the essential fats?
I'm not sure about the essential fats. I'm thinking that it's more inflammatory. I typically see this happen in patients who've had some kind of ocular inflammation, or they've had surgery in the past and they developed this macular pucker. So I do think it's some kind of injury to the retina or the surface of the retina that's causing this type of scar tissue that's developing.
So long-term attack by the immune system.
Yes.
What do we do to avoid glaucoma? Is that an eye issue, or is that a body issue that ends up in your eyes? How do you avoid that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So glaucoma is mainly an eye issue. I mean, of course, if you don't see well because of glaucoma, then you can have other issues as well elsewhere in the body. But we describe glaucoma as damage to the optic nerve in a specific pattern. And the pattern is that the damage causes loss of peripheral vision. So almost the opposite of macular degeneration, where macular degeneration affects central vision, glaucoma affects your peripheral vision. But similar to macular degeneration, in the earliest stages of glaucoma, people, they don't know that they have it. They really have no symptoms, or it's so slow in its progression that people don't realize until it's too late. Another reason to go get your annual eye checkup. But one of the major risk factors for glaucoma is high eye pressure. And we think that the eye pressure builds up because there's some kind of blockage of fluid or drainage within the system of the eye, the drainage system, and it's causing the eye pressure to build up, and then that adversely affects the optic nerve. And one of the treatments for glaucoma is to lower the eye pressure. Now, in the conventional world of eye care, most eye doctors will lower the eye pressure by a number of ways. Number one, drops, eye drops, various pharmaceutical agents to lower the eye pressure, or surgeries or lasers, or procedures, basically, surgeries and lasers. As an integrative eye doctor, I strongly believe that, yes, if you need to, you can use those measures, but also diet can be hugely beneficial. We were talking, I think you mentioned earlier, Brian, a little bit about berries. So berries have particular nutrients called anthocyanidins. These are pigmented compounds that protect plants from disease. And they're found in high concentrations in berries, like especially the darker berries, blackberries, blueberries, bilberries. So when we ingest these pigments, those benefits get conferred to our bodies of, antioxidant benefits and anti-inflammatory benefits. And there are studies that have shown that people who have berries or berry extracts, they can lower their eye pressure by at least 3 points. Now, you may not think that 3 points is a lot, but in the eye, 3 points can make a huge difference. If you're going from, let's say, a pressure of 18 down to 15 or 24 down to 21, that can make a huge difference to protect the optic nerve. So I always tell my patients, eat your way towards, better eye health, and that includes colorful berries. And also there are supplements that have there's a branded an ingredient that has a combination of berry extract and pine bark extract, and that can also lower eye pressure by several points.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We experimented with this about 22 years ago, where we got the powders. There was a group of young guys in Canada, the powders of the seeds of blackberry, black raspberry, and several others. And we took it and powdered it up in a coffee grinder. It was very fine. And we applied that directly to the eyes with glaucoma, and the pressure reduced. And so now let me put a slide up to show you something I studied back in the early 70s. And this is called iridology. And the master of it here in this country was a naturopathic doctor, chiropractic doctor, brilliant guy, really great human being, a great American, called Dr. Bernard Jensen. And if you look at that closely, I'll give you some time. The pressure also builds up because we have an imbalance in the way blood is flowing through the organ systems. And let's go back again and further describe this to the listeners. You always say veins. I even caught myself most of the time calling veins to people. But 26% of how blood moves through your body gets to the eyes, and from the eyes to the body is through veins. The other 74% are through these little tiny capillaries, which we go back to what we discussed about 18 minutes ago, that these capillaries are where most of the blood flow goes to the eyes. So now, why would older people generally have more eye problems and eye pressure problems than when you're 20 years old? Now, if you're 20 years old and morbidly obese, guess what? You're going to have eye problems like an 80-year-old person. Because why does a morbidly obese person have similar to somebody 60 years older because blood is not flowing to the eye. Now remember, blood is not only there to bring nutrition, to bring oxygen in, but it's also to carry away the waste. And if these little things are clogged constantly, you're going to build up pressure. And so we saw it with the ground up seeds. It wasn't very pleasant. Nobody really wanted to do it until it worked. You know, we worked on, I think, 7 people. No, it was 6 people. One dropped out. It was 6 people. And by the end, it dropped down to 4. But once those 4 really started to see the benefits of it, and I forget who told me that at that point, but it wasn't Dr. Jensen. It was somebody else. But I think the people watching this around the world, you may want to shoot this if this is new information to you, or at least look up iridology charts. My wife has much more elaborate education. She went to the German iridology courses also and did this. But when you look at the organs in particular areas of the eye, one of the things Jensen pointed out, we used to have 30, 50 people, one time 120 people in a class. He would show you that the organ that was impaired would reflect itself in the eye and vice versa. And the oddest one I ever saw was probably a 30-year-old man. And he brought him up and he said, look at this, half of his eye is blue, not even half, it was maybe 70% was blue and vividly dark brown the other part. And then he said he didn't know this kid, he just picked him out of the audience. And he said, did you have a kidney problem? And he said, oh my God, he said, I had a kidney injury and they threatened I'd get on dialysis and my kidney's working at 20%. And so this is how important this subject is tonight that we're talking about. I mean, the eyes are reflective of the body. They're diagnostically reflective, therapeutically reflected. Talk about nutrition as light, as we spoke about earlier. All of these things work together. And so I think it's very important to be comprehensive about what we're talking about tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could just elaborate on what you said, Brian, for a moment before Stephen, before we go on to the next question. So the eye is, it's often said that the eye is a window to the soul. The eye is really a window to our overall health. And the health of our body is reflected in these very, very delicate tissues of the eye. And as an ophthalmologist, I've been practicing almost 25 years now. I've seen countless systemic conditions I've diagnosed via an eye exam. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, those are just the basics. But then tumors elsewhere that you can pick up by looking at the iris. So really, it is so important, again, another plug, to get your eye exam. Autoimmune conditions oftentimes manifest in the eye, whether it's the cornea, the iris, the retina, the retinal vessels, the optic nerve. These tissues are so susceptible to the inflammatory state of the body, specifically autoimmune conditions. So it really is, it's almost like the eye is the canary in the coal mine. If something is brewing elsewhere in the body, it will show up in the eye first.
Yeah, this is testimony of how we have to stop being in our silos. You're an ophthalmologist, you're a cardiologist, you're a psychologist. I mean, this is, we've got to stop that. Why we're failing, why it's the number 3 killer in all of the developed world. Modern medicine is that. And there's a place for modern medicine. I mean, God bless the doctors that are doing surgery, and God bless the diagnostic tools we have. But to not understand what you just said as somebody who's practiced a quarter of a century and denounce it or not acknowledge it, if you're, an oncologist, or if you're a neurologist, I mean, that would anger me the most. Neurologists should know more about the eyes than anyone else, other than you. And they'll denounce it. They'll say that has nothing to do with anything.
Okay. What are you, what practical tips do you recommend for minimizing blue light exposure from screens, especially in the evenings? What are your recommendations regarding the use of blue blocking glasses?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with this one. This is really a pet peeve of mine. There is no proof that blue blocking glasses work. Zero proof. There have been multiple studies now that have been negative, like there's no benefit. What does work is nutrition. And those macular carotenoids, they've been studied either through diet or supplementation form, and they have been shown to help protect against eye strain and eye fatigue, and also improve glare sensitivity and contrast sensitivity. So I always tell my patients nutrition first. And I just want to add, this is a little plug for something I'm doing. I'm hosting the very first ever Eye Health Summit, and we're on this summit today learning about whole body health. But there's never been a summit dedicated to vision. And so this has been, a dream of mine for the past 6 years or so, but it's finally coming to fruition. We're going to launch May 1st through May 7th. And I have over 35 speakers that I've interviewed, similar to what we're doing here with Stephen and his team with this incredible conference. It's online, it's free, completely free for anyone to join. And I do really try to bring together the best of both worlds, conventional treatments with holistic integrative treatments, and blue light and screen time is a really hot topic. I have multiple speakers talking about this. What are the best ways? I talk about nutrition. Other people talk about exercises you can do to help with eye strain. I have other speakers talking about different apps and technology you can use and how you can put in different filters for your phone to help reduce blue light. But there are many, many ways to modulate blue light, but not blue blocking glasses.
Yeah, what's interesting is way back, there was a computer shop all over the United States called CompUSA. And I used to send people in there a while ago and say, they have a screen you can put over your computer and television, if the television's small enough. And that's more effective than wearing glasses. I mean, honestly, because it has metallic pieces in it. So the radiation that's coming out from there, both the television as well as the computer screen, is where your problem's coming from. So I completely agree with that.
Okay, in terms of nutritional supplementations that you feel are critical for the eyes, Brian, if you want to expand it to just critical for the body, but in terms of, what is the exact list of supplements, nutritional supplements, in addition to diet, that you believe we should be taking to protect ourselves from all these eye issues? And if you want to expand it beyond just the eyes, that's okay also. Both of you, the same question.
Okay. I guess I can start. So going back to lutein, zeaxanthin, the macular carotenoids, mesozeaxanthin is not readily found in nature. We think that most of our body converts most of the lutein we take into mesozeaxanthin, so we're getting it that way, but we're just not getting enough. Most people on a Western style diet are getting about less than 2 milligrams of lutein a day. But we need, especially our eyes need about 6.5 to 10 milligrams of lutein a day. So this is where supplementation comes in. If you eat a lot of leafy greens, great. I tell people strive, and cruciferous vegetables as well. I tell people strive for 5 cups total a day, and then you'll adequately get what your eyes need. But if you're not having those 5 cups a day, fill in the gaps with the supplement. So yes, look for the 3 macular carotenoids. I like a branded ingredient, which is Lutamax 2020, because it has those 3 macular carotenoids in the right ratios. But there's also up and coming evidence that another nutrient,
could you repeat that one again? Because you said it very fast. So what is a particular supplement?
It's called Lutamax 2020. And that's the one that's been most studied. And that's actually the one that's the ingredient found in most eye health supplements on the market. So it's very widely available, but it has the right ratio of all these 3 macular carotenoids that our eyes need. Many supplements only have lutein, but that's just not enough. We need the full spectrum. Astaxanthin is also an up-and-coming eye health nutrient. We know it's the king of carotenoids, more potent than vitamin C and A and E and even glutathione. It's very powerful. And so there are several studies showing its benefits for macular degeneration. It's been shown to help with blood flow to the choroid, which is in the back of the eye. And it's also been shown to help fight oxidative stress after cataract surgery. So if anyone is planning to have cataract surgery, I definitely recommend taking some astaxanthin around the perioperative period. So those are the key eye health nutrients. But beyond that, I always tell my patients, if you're taking a multi for your general health, make sure your multi has bioflavonoids. You need to have those bioflavonoids in your multi. And then finally, take a good omega blend. As we talked about earlier, not just threes, but take the full spectrum omega blend. That's my recommendation. So 3 supplements, the eye health one, which has the macular carotenoids and astaxanthin, then the multi with bioflavonoids, and then the full spectrum omega.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're good advice. And the xanthan actually comes from algae in the highest amount. So I'll start with all of the algae, depending upon your socioeconomics. But, you know, sea algae, everything from dulse to kelp to arami to hiziki to wakame. And you can get these in liquid form, so you're not running around eating, 20 different types. Chlorella, amazingly effective for this. Blue-green algae, the original life form. Vitamin D, there's mounting evidence. If you'd heard me 15 years ago railing against they're making up all this stuff about vitamin D, man, was I wrong. Almost on a weekly basis, there's new things coming out that I'm saying, I'm sorry for ever thinking that. And so the eye health and vitamin D, I must have read 25 studies in the last 5 years on that. And you have to have food created. And as you mentioned, multis, none of the antioxidants literally function if it's extracted and heated at a high temperature. So they have to be food-based, raw, and there are these. Many of the companies have these out there today. And ultimately, I think it's rare you'd ever need to take vitamin E. And sadly, 87% of vitamin E's originating out of turpentine, so you don't want that supplement. But vitamin E in green leafy vegetables, and I don't think there's anything that green leafy vegetables can't do. We've been proving that for 70 years here.
Great. Do you guys both of you have any comments on light bulbs? In other words, I'm in a house, I don't know if it matters, if it's incandescent, if it's LED, if it's compact fluorescent. Is this an issue I should be thinking about? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, it is very important. In our modern world, yes, we're leaning towards energy saving bulbs. So instead of incandescents, I don't even think many places sell those anymore. It's very hard to find incandescent bulbs. Yeah, so they become like outlawed. But most of us have, CFLs or LED lights in our homes. Our devices are emitting, LED lights. And it has a really high concentration of blue light in addition to fluorescence. And so all of these artificial forms of blue light can interfere with our sleep. They can lead to eye strain, especially on screens. In children, there's some early studies that show that they may lead to behavioral issues, and especially in young kids. So we need to really limit our exposure to these artificial forms of blue light, especially in the evenings. So I typically tell my patients, if you're shopping for a bulb, you're getting, one of those fancy bulbs, you might as well get a smart bulb that can change its color saturation. So during the day, it can mimic what's outside, when the sun is rising and it's high in the sky, it's emitting more blue light. So that bulb can emit more blue light. And then towards the end of the day, it emits very little to no blue light. And then it can emit more warmer tones. And so that's a simple way to kind of get around the difficulty finding incandescents. Incandescents, by the way, don't emit much blue light at all. So if you have them, great. I would recommend them over some of the newer energy saving bulbs. But if not, get the smart bulb.
Thank you.
Yeah. 90 years ago or more, John Ott, he's a gentleman who created for Disney the film Fantasia. If you never saw Fantasia, it was like, you think it came from 1990 or something, and he was a master in light therapy. And interesting enough, he wasn't a trained scientist in this, but he knew more than anyone else at the time. And he created a full spectrum light bulb that now has been mimicked by Sylvania and Philips, et cetera, and you can get them in all sizes. even where you have the fixtures, where you have the nasty fluorescent bulbs, you can put full spectrum bulbs into that. So why would that be best? Because your brain, my brain, is wired to relate to sunlight, the frequencies and vibrations that come from the photonic energy of the sun. So you're going to sleep better, feel better, think better. And as you pointed out, I read 4 studies on this. One of my very close colleagues is a masterful Ph.D. in education. And the thing she tells me is frightening. Like 60% of the kids graduating high school in America can't read now. And that used to be 20% back in, 40 years ago. But with that said, this is not just about seeing right and feeling right. It's about keeping the brain happy, sleeping better, not having a child whose brain's developing being cross-circuited by waves that it can't relate to. It's like a scary movie in the brain without knowing it's a scary movie. So I'm all for full spectrum light bulbs, and especially when you live in the north. I mean, when you're in the south, hopefully you get out enough and you get sun, 12 months a year. In the north, really for 3 or 4 months a year, you get little to no sun, and for another 2 months, you get too little sun. So you get 6 months, maybe, 5 months, you get sun. So that's important, and be very, very cautious. It's all about the environment and saving money. But by the way, if you save all the money in the world and you croak, it's not going to matter. So do the right thing.
If you could each give a 30-second closing summation thought, and then tell us how we could follow up with you, with your books and your work and your website. Do you do phone consultations? What's the best way to follow up with you? Dr. Banik, you first.
Sure. I just want to reiterate what I said before is make eye health a priority. Don't wait until something happens, because then it may be too late. It may be irreversible. So get it addressed early. I have my website, so I offer a lot of information on there, a lot of resources. I actually have a podcast as well called the IQ Podcast. So I invite people to subscribe to that. The Eye Health Summit is coming up. So it's a wealth of information. Again, 36 speakers on over 35 topics. We're having recorded sessions as well as live panel discussions. So there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of the experts. And I do telemedicine consults. The only caveat is that I'm licensed only in New York State. So I can only do that consult if you also live in New York State.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
And
So,
Brian?
of course, we have a residential program here. We pioneered what is called lifestyle medicine, and we've had here, and when we've done off-campus programs, 1 million people come through our programs, and millions more attend programs that I conduct worldwide. For instance, I'll be in Texas next weekend. For the last part of May, I'll be in 8 countries in Europe lecturing, etc. This is the latest magazine. You can download this by the QR code there. This is biohacking. So what we called biohacking back in 1956 has now been renamed as biohacking. And so we're giving you the legacy of what we've seen. And the same, it's really interesting, the so-called authorities on living longer today are actually teaching the Hippocrates lifestyle. So exactly what we've been doing. And over here, you can learn more about coming to the Institute. You can download that. And of course, Stephen and I began this venture, what was it, 12 or 13 years ago now, Stephen? And he came to me, and it was after one of my lectures in Manhattan, and he said, how do we create an organization that literally gets this information out? And the first year we were out in Long Island, and Anna Marie, my wife, and I did the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And he said, let's do it next year. And I said, as much as I read and as much as I learn, I'm not going to have new material for next year for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So then he expanded it to 3 days, and then you went to 9 days. And now I'm so proud of you, 17 days. And, having people on like you just did tonight, this doctor who's way above the game of almost every other eye doctor I know. You and Dr. Shalesi are the only people that talk this language that I know. Do you know Dr. Kelsa?
No, I don't know Dr.
I'll
Kelso.
introduce you.
I would
We
love
really
to,
have
yeah, I would love to connect. So
He's rated one of the top 5 eye doctors in the United States. So I use him for counsel, but he's not close to you. He's an eye surgeon. He's created biotech companies. 70% of his work is done with supplementation and reversing eyes and preventing surgeries. And so it is
yeah, we'll
uniquely,
definitely have the same mission. So yes, I would love to connect.
it's
Yeah.
uniquely powerful that you're giving us a venue, Stephen, and putting people of this ilk and this quality. And so out there, we just send you love. And thanks for listening tonight.
Thank you very much. If we could unmute everyone so they could thank Dr. Banik and Brian.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Nothing at all, Brian. I really appreciate the
Thank you.
information.